Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Saraswatyai Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamaya Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Neelambujasyamalakomalankam Sita Samaropitavamabhagam Parno Mahasayakacharuchapam Namami Ramam Vamshanatham Atulita Baladhamam Hema Shailabhadeham Tanujavana Krishanum Jnaninaamagraganyam Sakala Guna Nidhanam Vanaranamadhisham Raghupati Priya Bhaktam Vatajatam Namami. We are resuming our Ramayana class after somewhat of a break. And for those who are joining for the first time today, we're actually quite a way into the story. So we're not starting from the beginning. But the thing about the Ramayana is that everybody knows the story, right? It's not really about listening to find out what happens. We know what happens. The listening is for a different purpose. And particularly as students of Vedanta, one of the things that we often neglect is the importance of bhakti. We are very focused on self-inquiry and on asking this question, who am I? But it's so important that as seekers of this supreme truth, that we prepare our mind to receive this knowledge. And we know that without preparation, even if we listen to Upanishads, we listen to the Bhagavad Gita, we listen to anything, without having prepared our mind, there is very little that actually we will understand. So what is it that makes us prepared, right? What is it that allows us to develop the kind of mind that becomes a fit vessel for this knowledge? One of the simplest means that is recommended to us is bhakti. You know that when you study Vedanta, you have to develop all the qualifications of viveka, vairagya, etc. All of those are encapsulated within this one practice of devotion. Right? We gain everything when we have devotion. And so the purpose of listening to this story, and particularly the Tulasi Ramayana, the Ramcharitmanas, is that bhakti is what grows in our heart. That devotion to the Lord starts to make itself known in our mind. We all have the capacity for love. Right? We all have the capacity for devotion. But we just need a bit of reminding for that flame to be kindled and to burn brighter. It's not like we're trying to bring something new which we don't already have. So this, just listening to the story is a beautiful way of doing that. But also there are so many lessons contained within the Ramayana for us to learn. And so here where we are is after the kidnapping of Sitaji. Sitaji has been taken by Ravana, and being there in Lanka, her only preoccupation is now to take the name of the Lord. She's not interested in anything else. She's not looking around to find out what's Lanka like. Can I explore? She is sitting in the garden and she is simply remembering Bhagavan as she last saw him. which was in pursuit of this golden deer. Now, in this particular episode, there is one special Leela which Bhagavan now performs. And what is that? He is now displaying the agony of separation. Bhagavan Ram is Bhagavan, right? And Bhagavan isn't separated from anyone. He is not away from anything or anyone. But here he is showing what the effect of attachment is. So there's a very interesting lesson here for us to learn. What we'll do is we'll just read after doha 29, just the first 4 chopas we'll read. From Raghupati Anujahi. Everyone has it? Yeah. Raghupati Anujahi avat dekhi bahij chinta kinhi biseshi Janaka suta pariharihu akeli ayahu tat bachana mama peli nisichara nikara phirahi banmahi mama manasita ashramanahi gahi pada kamala anuja churi Kahilu nath kachu mohina khuri Anuja sameta gaye prabhuta hava Godavari tat ashrama jahava Ashrama dekhi janki hina Bhai bikal jas prakrita dina Aguna khani janaki sita Rupa sila pratane mapunita Lakshmana samujhaya bahubhati Uchat chale lata tarupati. So we know how Sitaji was kidnapped, right, in this story. Ravana enlists his uncle, Marich. He says, I need your help for a very special mission. So he tells Marich, I want you to transform into this golden deer. They both go to the forest where Bhagavan, Sitaji, Lakshmanji are staying. And Sitaji, seeing this golden deer, then has this desire to possess it. Okay? And in Tulasi Ramayana, we see this very unique portion where just before all of this commotion starts taking place, the real Sitaji she enters into fire. And she produces a Maya Sita. Okay? And this Maya Sita is the one whose mind gets captured by the deer. In other words, what is it that takes our mind away from Bhagavan? Right? Before that happened, before this switch was made, Sitaji had no other concern in life than Śrī Rāma. She was not thinking of anyone else. She was not looking at anyone else. Now when this switch is made and this golden deer appears, her mind gets attracted to it. And she says, I want it. So Bhagavan runs after this deer. And when he kills this deer, Marich calls out in Bhagavan's voice, Lakshman, Lakshman. Right? So Sitaji thinks now he needs help. She sends Lakshman. And she sends Lakshmanji, speaking something very harshly to him. Right? What exactly she says is not given here. but she says something. In Valmiki Ramayana, etc., what she says is given, and very, very difficult to hear, actually, what she accuses Lakshmanji of. But here, she just says something, and he goes. And in that time, Ravana comes, and he takes Sitaji. Right? As he's going, this Jatayuji, he comes, right? This king of vultures, and he tries to stop Ravana. That doesn't work. So now Sitaji has gone with Ravana. Bhagavan is in the forest, and Lakshmanji is on his way to Śrī Rāma. So now Bhagavan sees Lakshman coming. Right? And what was his instruction to Lakshman? Stay in the ashram, look after Sita, and use your buddhi and use your bala, use your viveka. In other words, Bhagavan was kind of telling him something will happen, you need to be careful. Now Bhagavan sees Lakshman coming without Sitaji. And what he does, very interestingly here, what is said, Bahija chinta keenhi biseshi. Outwardly, he starts to display a lot of worry and anxiety. Now, just by the fact that he says outwardly, you know that something different is happening inwardly, right? Like if I say, outwardly, she was smiling, means you know that in that person's mind, she's not smiling, right? Something else is going on. Outwardly, if Bhagavan is displaying a lot of concern and anxiety, what it means is inwardly nothing is happening. There is no concern. This is just a leela. We do the same, but very often it's the other way around, right? What happens for us is inside we're really worried, and outside we're projecting a very, I'm very calm. Nothing bothers me. And inside you can never tell how someone's thoughts are racing and what they're thinking. Bhagavan is the other way. Outwardly he is looking very worried. And he says, Janaka Suta Pariharihu Akeli, you have left the daughter of Janaka, you've left her there alone. Here Bhagavan is really, as older brother, he's telling Lakshmana off. You've left her alone. I avata bachana mama, you ignored everything that I said and you left her. Why was I so concerned? He says there are so many Rakshasas wandering around in this forest. And actually Bhagavan says, Mama mana Sita ashrama nahi. In my mind, Sitaji is no longer in the ashram. I know she's not there anymore. Now, why Lakshmanji left Sitaji? Because she spoke to him very harshly. Right? Otherwise he would have stayed. Interestingly, you all know that Lakshman Rekha story, right? Where he draws the line outside the kutia. Here, none of that is described. But later, Mandodari is talking to Ravana and she talks about it then. In India, you get this Lakshman Rekha, and actually what it is it's like to keep ants out. Must be some chemicals or something in it. And it's like a chalk, you take it and no ants will cross that line. It's not for Ravana. Here, Bhagavan is saying you left Sita. Lakshman immediately goes and he falls at Bhagavan's feet. He says, Oh Nath, oh Lord, it's not my fault. Meaning, I was following your instruction. Only because Sitaji spoke to me in this way, I left. Now see here, explicitly, Lakshmanji doesn't say anything, right? You think about when we experience something or when we're trying to achieve something, okay? And we don't achieve it, something goes wrong. And it's not necessarily because we've done something wrong. Somebody else has not, put forth their effort. Somebody else has not contributed. And because of that person's lack of effort, this thing has not been achieved. Now, how many of us, immediately when we're asked, we'll say, listen, I did my part. Don't look at me. It was. They didn't do. We're very ready always, because the reality is when something goes wrong, you look for someone to blame, right? Anything, whether it's something at home or something at work or anywhere, when something goes wrong, you always look for somebody to blame or to take responsibility. Now, if you know who is to blame, and it's not you, you know whose mistake has brought about this failure or whatever it is, and you are asked to account for how this failure took place, how many of us will be first in line to point the finger? Okay, and to say, this person. See, it's such a small thing, right? All he says is, it's not my doing that I'm here. But there is so much for us to think about. And to also learn that in our behavior in this world, what is the ideal, right? How do you deal with that kind of situation? We'll say, but we don't have as understanding a boss as Śrī Rāma. Because he doesn't ask any more questions, they just go. Your boss may be asking you questions that, why did it go wrong? Tell me who is responsible. But Lakshmanji doesn't say anything. Right? So we always have to ask, that, what is the purpose that is going to be served in anything that we say? Right? Any speech, the question that must be asked is, what purpose does this serve? Is it helpful? Is it true? Is it pleasant? Is it measured? Now, what good would be done by Lakshmanji saying, Sitaji insulted me and accused me and said XYZ? Any good would come of that? No. It's not a pleasant thing to say. It's true, but it's not necessary. It's true, but it's not pleasant. He doesn't say it. And Bhagavan drops the issue. And now they go to the ashram. It's where they were staying. Okay? So they're journeying back to this ashram. And Tulsidas says, Bhagavan is acting like Bhaye Bikala. He becomes so disturbed, so agitated, Jasa Prakrita Dina, like a very uncultured person who is so helpless, who is completely dependent. Like that person, Bhagavan is acting. And what is he saying? Ha guna khani janaki Sita, O Janaki. You are the abode of all good virtues. Rupa Sila, so beautiful and so steadfast in your vows. Where are you? Bhagavan is going around and asking, where are you? Lakshmanji is trying to explain that Bhagavan is not here. And Bhagavan is so distraught, he has to play a role, right? And if Bhagavan has to play a role, you can be sure that he'll be the best at whatever role he has to play. So he has to play the role of someone who is very disturbed. So now what he does, Puchata jale lata tarupanti. He starts going to the trees and the creepers and saying, have you seen Sita? Have you seen my Sita? Hey Khagamriga, hey Madhukara Shreni, he's asking all the birds and the bees. Tuma dekhi Sita Mriganeni, have you seen Sita, who has these eyes like a deer? Now he gives one long list of all different birds and trees and plants. And traditionally what this is when the feminine form is being described, then it may be a flower or it may be an animal or something is used to compare a particular part of the body. Okay? So how you always hear like lotus-eyed, etc. So now what Bhagavan he gives this long list and he says, all these flowers and creatures, they are now so happy. Why are they happy? Because Sitaji is no longer there. When Sitaji was there, they all paled in comparison because she is so beautiful. And now that she's not there, people will start appreciating them once again. So he says, you all must be very happy. And he says, oh Sita, without you, all of these are so overjoyed. How can you stand it? Please come back. Come back to me. And he's going around like an extremely desirous person, someone who's full of desire. Now, you might ask, why is he doing this, right? Why is Bhagavan doing this Leela? So one explanation is when he was in the forest, what type of people live in the forest? So one is all these Rakshasas, right? But who else lives in the forest? All the sages, all the munis and the sannyasis. And when Bhagavan was living in the forest, they all saw him with Sitaji. And they all started to think, actually, maybe householder life is good. Look how happy they are. Bhagavan is making some flowers for Sitaji and he's putting them in her hair. Sitaji is serving him. And they're living in such harmony. They're so happy. Maybe we should also get married. Now Bhagavan knows that these sannyasis have not come to the forest to get married. Their resolve has to be protected. So now to show what is the flip side of desire, what is the negative side of desire and attachment, he is doing this. Because if you see somebody who is so distressed that he's going around talking to the trees and the flowers, you'll think, oh my God, desire makes you mad. I don't want this. I don't want to experience this. So for their benefit, Bhagavan is showing us that you may think from the outside something looks very nice, but that's only while you have it, right? What happens when it gets taken away from you? What happens when you get separated from that object of your desire? Then you're in misery. So this is what he is showing them, right? And how you know he's only showing everything, Bhagavan is described as Puranaka, means he has no desire. All his desires are fulfilled. But also what happens is, as they are traveling, Bhagavan and Lakshman come now to where Jatayuji has fallen. Right? After his fight with Ravana. And immediately, Bhagavan drops all his lamenting and his crying and everything. And immediately he goes to Jatayu. Which also shows you that actually this is just, okay? When you are really upset and when you are really affected by some sorrow, by some grief, you can't just drop it like that. Say you're really, really unhappy at something, right? And somebody brings you your favorite food. Will you immediately stop crying and say, oh, thank you very much, and start eating? No, because that sorrow is genuine, right? It's really there in your mind. It takes time. And you know that if somebody does stop crying and say, oh, thank you very much, that sorrow was not real. Were you just doing it so that I brought you your favorite food or what? So immediately he stops. Now this is also a really important part. Jatayuji, now Bhagavan meets with him. he has been all this time just lying on the floor and meditating on, just thinking of Bhagavan's lotus feet. Now Bhagavan meets him. He sits down on the ground. He brings Jatayuji in his lap. He's stroking his head. And Tulasidas says, as he meets with Ram, all his pain disappears. He was in agony because Ravana had, if you remember, he cut off his wings. It's like having your arms cut off. So Jatayu is lying there in agony. And he is now meeting with him. Right? Now, one thing which is seen here is, what was Jatayu trying to do? When he saw Ravana taking Sitaji, when he flew to meet Ravana, what was he trying to do? To save Sitaji, right? What is the outcome of his interaction with Ravana? Pain, suffering. Did he achieve what he set out to achieve? No, right? Sitaji has gone with Ravana and he is lying here. So now in our mind, or to anyone who reads this, you may think that Jatayu has failed in his mission. And yet Bhagavan is acting so compassionately towards him. Ravana succeeded in taking Sita. Jatayuji failed in preventing Sita from being kidnapped. Who is successful here? So now, this is very important because the question that it raises is, what is our idea of success? Right? If our idea of success is to achieve the goal that I set out to achieve, then Ravana succeeded, Jatayu failed. Ravana took Sitaji, Jatayu is here lying on the ground without his wings. Not only he failed, he suffered greatly as a result of even attempting to achieve this goal. But Bhagavan is not rewarding Ravana. He has come to Jatayu, and you will see what he does. He is offering him the chance to live. He says to Jatayuji that I will give you your body back. So now who is successful? What is success then, right? Success is not merely the fulfillment of a goal. Real success is if Bhagavan becomes compassionate towards us, that is success. In the Rama Gita, Lakshmanji asks, what is devotion? And Bhagavan says, that which melts my heart, that is devotion. Now, who has melted Śrī Rāma's heart here? Jatayuji. Despite being, he addresses him as father actually. Jatayu was a contemporary of Dasharatha Maharaj. And in trying to do this, he has suffered so greatly. Bhagavan, his heart completely melts at what Jatayuji has tried to do. And what is basically said here is, it's much better to fail at a noble endeavor than to succeed at an unnoble, whatever the word is, endeavor, ignoble. This is a really difficult thing because our ideas of success and failure are so fixed that success means achieving your goal and failure means not achieving your goal. There's a very famous story, right, of two saints or two seekers who are meditating under one tree. And one day, Narada comes past, sage Narada. And they ask him, Naradaji, please tell us, how long will it take for us to gain self-realization? And they both receive similar answers. Naradaji says to one, another 50 years, 100 years, something. He gets so angry. He said, I've been spending my whole life sitting here under this tree meditating. I left my family, I left my job, I left all my comforts. And now you're telling me it's so much time. He gets so angry, he gives up. This is worthless. I'm giving up my quest for moksha. The other one asked Naradaji, how long will it take, Naradaji? He says, as many leaves are on this tree, that many births you have to take. Not that many years, that many births you have to take. Thank you. Now I know how much harder I have to try. And he sits down again and he keeps meditating. I mean, imagine if somebody told you in this life, there is no way that you will achieve self-realization. And you don't know how many lives in the future you will achieve this. How many of us with the same conviction will still keep doing our sadhana, will still keep striving and doing this inquiry, even knowing that I will not achieve in this life? Because we feel that's a failure then. If I've not achieved it, and if I have to die and be born again, then why should I try it like that? Our very definition of our understanding of those two things has to change. What is success? Success actually is to strive for something noble. Not to achieve something noble. To strive for something noble is already putting us on the path of success. To wake up every day and do our sadhana. To live in the attitude of surrender and dedication. Even if, yes, one day you might get angry and one day you might lose your patience and something might happen, but the striving is the success, right? It's not that something has gone wrong and therefore I failed. This is what Jatayuji is teaching us. So this is something that is so important for us to recognize, right? That Ravana, in spite of his seeming success, is the one who has failed. And Jatayu, in spite of his apparent failure, is the one who has succeeded. He meets Bhagavan here, and Jatayuji immediately tells him, because Bhagavan is looking at him and wondering what's happened to you. Jatayuji immediately tells him, Natha dasanana yaha gati ki. It was Ravana who has done this. Now this is also very interesting. Jatayuji tells Bhagavan, who has taken Sitaji. But what happens after this? They travel everywhere. Bhagavan goes to meet with Sugriva. He helps defeat Vali. Then after staying for some time, he gets Sugriva's help. And he says, we'll send monkeys to north, east, west, south. He already knows who has Sitaji. He already knows where she's gone. He tells her that Le that China Disi Gaya Gosai. Jatayuji told him he took her in the southern direction. So why Bhagavan had to go through this whole thing and go north, east, west, south and send so many monkeys, etc. This is also important, right? If Bhagavan had immediately found Ravana and defeated him, then one, the story would be a lot shorter. But all those monkeys who had the opportunity to serve him, they wouldn't have had the opportunity. He would not have met Sugriva. He would not have, now he's going to meet Shabariji. So many things will happen. And this is the other thing you see, that it's not what Bhagavan does, it's how he does it. If he had to defeat Ravana, he didn't need to stay in the forest for 14 years and wander around like a hermit. He could have done it. Why has he done all of these things? That is for us to think about. Okay. So Jatayuji tells him, this is what happened. Sitaji was so upset. And I've only held on to my life because I thought that I would see you. And now that I've seen you, my life has departed. Rama says, you can live for longer. I will extend your life. And something so beautiful Jatayuji says here. He says, Jakara nama marata mukha ava, adhama mukuta hoi shruti gava. He says the scriptures say that even the worst person taking your name at the time of death, that person is liberated. So mama lochana gochara age. You are appearing in front of me now. You whose name can liberate even the lowest, most wicked type of person. They take your name once when they are dying. Why would I need to extend my life? Means why should I live any longer? I have seen you. In other words, what is the purpose of life? Not to live as long as we possibly can, and to try and extend our youth for longer and longer and longer. Nowadays, people are doing all sorts of things. I don't know if you've been seeing in the news. Shocking, the type of things that people are doing to try and extend their, not even to extend life, to extend their youth, really. That's what people want, isn't it? The type of things that you only hear about in horror stories, people are practicing really in the world. Why? So that I can enjoy for 5 more years, 10 more years, 15 more years. So that I can have my family, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. So that I can have more experiences. I can travel to new places and I can... What for? Because I've seen you, my life is full. Okay. So I don't need anything else. Bhagavan says one very important thing again. Parahita basa jina ke mana mahi, tina kahu jagat durlabha kachu nahi. For that person who has others' interests, others' well-being as the most important thing in his life, that person will not, nothing will be difficult for him. In other words, if we are living to serve others, nothing is impossible. In the Gita, Shri Krishna describes the devotee as Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. Right? Who are devotees? Those who are reveling in the welfare or well-being of all beings. What Puja Guruji has written about Puja Gurudev. Samasta Jana Kalyane Nirata. Samasta Jana means of all people, Kalyani, in their welfare. Nirata, one who is constantly reveling. Karunamaya, one who is full of compassion. For that person, nothing is impossible. Now you look at devotees or saints like Puja Gurudev. What was difficult for them? What did they not do? in their life? What have they not achieved? Something which for us appears impossible. We think this is not possible for one person to do. You know, when scholars study our scriptures, etc., and you read that Bhagavan Vedavyas wrote so many scriptures, etc., they'll say this is not possible. Vyasa was a title, like any other title, like Prime Minister. So many people actually were Vyasa, and that's how there are so many texts which are written by him, because it wasn't one person. Why? Because in our mind, it's impossible that one person can achieve what they achieved. If you actually sit down and look at what Pujya Gurudev has done, and how many commentaries he's written, how many centers he established, what work he did, here's just one example, right? So many saints, etc. are there. You will look at that list of achievements and you will think, impossible. One person cannot have done this. Not in one lifespan, in 40 years. Because when did Chinmay Mission start? In 1951. 40 odd years. You look at what all he's done, you will think, no. But this Bhagavan himself is saying, if you are dedicated to the welfare of others, there is nothing in this life which will be difficult. Which basically what is being said, life is difficult when we become selfish. And that's what he's saying. Very simple. When we become selfish and our vision narrows, and we are only thinking of achieving for ourselves, then life becomes difficult. Why does Arjuna have a crisis in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita? Because he starts thinking, my relatives, my teacher, I will be the cause of my relatives' deaths. As long as he's thinking, this is my dharma as a kshatriya, and I just have to be here and fight, there is no issue whatsoever. When I and mine come into the picture, that's when this mental breakdown takes place. And if we reflect in our life, when do we start finding things difficult? It's because this ego starts in asserting itself, and we cannot see past our own individual interests. Then things get difficult. Very simple. If you are facing a problem, right? Say within your family or within your workplace, and you are facing a problem that is personal. If you just do this exercise of thinking from the standpoint of the family, how do I define this problem? Even the very definition of the problem will change. From the standpoint of the organization, what is this problem? Most likely it will not even be a problem anymore. Once you change your standpoint. So all difficulty comes when selfishness comes. And that's, you don't see 1 ounce of selfishness in Jatayu. Right? He's not thinking, what will happen if I go to Ravana and I get defeated, or what will happen to my reputation, etc. He's not thinking about himself at all. This is why he is successful. Because in him, there is no selfishness. This is the secret here. So now Rama asks him, what shall I give you? You have accomplished everything. So he says, I will send you to my dham. So I will send you to you drop your body and you go to my abode. And one very nice thing, it says, on your way, you will meet Dashrath Maharaj. Don't tell him that Sitaji has been kidnapped. He'll get very upset. Dashrath Maharaj was so protective of Sitaji. He says, don't tell him. If I am Ram, then together with his family, Ravana himself will go and tell Dashrath Maharaj. In other words, Ravana will die. He'll go to where Dashrath Maharaj is. You don't tell him that Sitaji has been kidnapped. So now Giriraj Jatayu, he drops his body and he assumes Rama's form. So this is one type of mukti in the Bhakti tradition, to take the form of the Lord. So he takes the form of Bhagavan with all jewels and with these yellow clothes, dark body, 4 arms, and now he praises Ram. So we'll read some of this stuti. We'll just see the first 2 we can read. So this is after Doha 31, the stuti part, the chandas. Jaya Rama Rupa Anupa Nirguna Saguna Guna Preraka Sahi Dasasi Sabahu Prachanda Khandana Chanda Saramandana Mahi Patho Dagata Sarojam Rajiv Ayat Lochanam Nitanaumi Rama Kripana Bahu Visala Bhava Bhaya Mochanam Balama Prameya Manadi Majama Vyaktamekama Gocharam Govinda Goparadvandvahara Vijnana Ghanadhara Nidharam Jai Rama Mantra Japanta Santa Ananta Janam Ranjanam Nitanaumi Rama Akama Priya Kamadi Haladala Ganjana. Just take here. This is Jaya Ram, glory to Ram. Now, one thing you always see in these stutis is, especially in the Tulasi Ramayana, Rama will be praised, one, as Nirguna Brahma. Because Tulsidas Ji is very clear, Rama is not just Rama. Rama is that absolute truth. So he will be praised as Nirguna Brahma. Rama will be praised as Saguna Nirakar Ishvara, means God without form, but with qualities. This is generally actually how God is seen in most traditions, right? God doesn't have form, but God has qualities. He is all loving, all compassionate. He is the one who is dispensing justice, etc. So he will be praised as Ishvara in this way. Then he will be praised as Saguna Sakar, means with qualities and with form. So with this particular form that he has as Rama here, he will be praised in that way also. So you'll see all of these. So he says, Jaya Rama Rupa Anupa, whose form is incomparable, who is both Nirguna and Saguna. This is one thing that is also very important. That the reason that our tradition works, despite having so many different philosophies, is that nobody is denying the other person's philosophy. Yes, we may be studying Advaita, but we're not going to stand and tell somebody who's following Dvaita that, listen, you stop, you're Stop this and you only come and study Advaita, Vishishtadvaita, whatever it may be. This is a reason that it works. And so that flexibility in our mind, actually, that's where the flexibility needs to be. That should always be. Because if we start insisting that, no, God is only without form, then we become like fanatical, right? And that's where issues happen. That's where problems begin. So God can be seen in so many different forms, and that's the joy, right? That's the beauty of it. So God is both nirguna and saguna. He is the one who is prompting all the gunas. In other words, who is Ishvara? The one who wields this creative power, who wields Maya. That is Ishvara. He is the one whose arrows are able to defeat this Ravana. And he is the ornament of this earth. Rama is the ornament of the earth. He is his most beautiful form appearing on earth. And what is his form? So now you see Nirguna, Saguna, now form. Batho, the God. How is Bhagavan's body? Dark, like those rain-bearing clouds. Not just any clouds, like those, really dark. Sometimes when it's about to rain a lot and you look outside, it may be 10 in the morning, but it looks like it's nighttime. Those type of clouds. Bhagavan's body is dark, even though here he looks very, looks very fair. Saroja Mukha. Bhagavan has a lotus face. Rajiva Ayata Lochanam, and his lotus eyes. Red lotus. I bow down to that Rama. Nita Nomi. I'm constantly bowing down to that Rama. Kripala, who is so compassionate. And Bahu Visala, whose arms are so vast. The whole world has to be encompassed within Bhagavan's arms, right? So his arms have to be, you can't tell here because he's holding them up. But when you see Bhagavan with arms straight, especially if he's standing next to Lakshmanji, his arms are always longer. Rama is described as Ajanu Bahu, means whose arms reach down to his knees. Lakshmanji has normal size. So, his very long arms. Kripala Bahu Visala, Avabhaya Mochanam, the one who liberates us from the fear of samsara. His balam is aprameyam, his strength is unmeasurable. He is anadi. So again, here you have everything. As Ishvara, his strength is immeasurable. As that truth, he is beginningless, ajam, unborn, avyaktam, unmanifest, ekam, beyond the senses. The point of all these studies, one is to understand what is being said. But once we understand and we read, that bhava with which the stuti is sung gets transferred to our heart. That is the point. Not that we read it and we say, oh wow, Jatayu was really poetic. Next, what's happening? Let's move on to the next bit. That yes, we also start to see Bhagavan is so compassionate. And if at all my fear of samsara has been relieved, it's by his grace and compassion. That I have seen in my own life, his strength is immeasurable. We start to see these things for ourselves. That is the point of reading this, right? Otherwise, it's just like with the Bhagavad Gita, you can read the whole thing. And at the end, if you're just reading it like a book, Arjuna and Krishna had a really nice conversation. Then what happened? So this is the point here, right? That bhava gets transferred. So who is Bhagavan Govinda, who is known by the Vedas and who is beyond the Vedas, who removes all dualities in our life, who is that pure consciousness, and who is the supporter of the earth, dharani dhara. We are just seeing the translation because we can't, we could spend time and see each thing. Jai Rama mantra japanta santa, those saints who constantly take Rama's name. Ananta janamara manaranjana, for them, Rama becomes the one who delights them. It brings great joy. Nita Nomi Rama, I bow down to that Rama, who is akama priya, who is very dear to those who have no desire. In second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, how is Sthita Prajna described? When Arjuna asks, the first thing that Bhagavan says, well, Gita students, Rajahati Ada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogata. Okay? Means the main characteristic of a Sthita Prajna is desirelessness. And usually what we think, you know, if somebody is living their life without desire, that person's life must be so boring. Must be really dull. Hear what Tulasi, what Jatayu is saying. Only those who have no desire can have love for Bhagavan. Means when you free all this space up, right? When we remove all these attachments, who's going to fill that space? Bhagavan fills that space. Akamati. And if you say, Bhagavan, I have so much desire, so that means I can't love you or what? He says, Kamadi Kaladala Ganjana. Bhagavan is the one who will destroy that desire. He is the one who will remove it if you need help removing it. So everybody has hope. So rest we'll have to see next. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om